Welcome back. Episode 5, Midjourney Fast Hours. And we are officially 5 episodes in. I've got my man Rory Flynn here. I'm Drew Brucker. And if you haven't joined us for any of the previous episodes, welcome. Rory, what's happening, dude?
Nothing much, man. I can't believe it's been over a month already we've been doing this. And also, just special shout out to Peru and Latvia. You guys, we are now number 2, the official number 2 art and design podcast in Peru and Latvia. So, shout out to our friends there. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget Ecuador. I think we're like number 3.
Oh,
Brazil,
hell yeah.
number 6 or 7. Guys, we're making waves.
Just world domination. Duh.
International waves. But yeah, seriously, I think it's just been so cool to see, just different countries jump in and the support we've gotten along the way. But let's get right to it, man. Let's get right to the meat of this and why we're here today and why we sort of moved this podcast up. And that is v6.1 in Midjourney. Holy shit. First model update in 8 or 9 months. So this is a big one. There's a lot to dissect here. We got all the updates. Rory and I are going to comb through. We've obviously been playing and testing it since it dropped, not even 48 hours ago. So let's get into it. Tell me what your initial thoughts are on v6.1, biggest things that you're really happy about, and maybe some of the things that you think could be improved for 6.2 or 7.
Totally, man. Yeah, I think there's, of course, Runway and Midjourney have to drop major updates in successive days. So, whatever plans I had this week, see ya, those are gone. But the 6.2 or the 6.1 update, I was looking forward to it because I didn't really know. It seems like they were going back and forth whether they were going to do 2 updates, 1 update, whatever that might be. So when you mentioned like 2 weeks ago it was going to be 6.1, I figured this wouldn't be a massive jump. It'd be subtle improvements, which I think this is very similar to 5. Like the difference between version 5 and 5.1. Like, I think, remember going back to 5.1, there was that, it was enhanced color and enhanced, image clarity, right? And that's kind of what this feels like also. We talked about this on the podcast maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, where it's like, how much better can it get? And it's like, all right, they threw some subtle things in here that I like. I'm happy they brought back the quality parameter. That one feels like it's been ghosted for a long time. It felt like that was bigger in V4 and V5 than it is now, but it makes a difference. Like that Q2 parameter, we'll go over all this stuff in detail. But that one to me was the biggest improvement because I prompt for a lot for texture. So texture to me is pretty big. I like to put it in a lot of my prompts. So having that increased texture and sharpness on those textures makes a big deal. I was happy about that. There's still some issues. I think they promised some changes. I don't know if they're necessarily, have fulfilled them. You would call it that. Hands, still an issue. If you're prompting just for hands, that's not 100% yet. Still going to be, you're going to have to do your workarounds and rerun a few times until it gets it right. It's definitely a lot better in terms of hand detail. The fingers don't look as fat or as anatomically weird. But yeah, man, I think there was definitely a nice little surprise. And this is like an emergency podcast, right? Like we had to jump on and do this.
Emergency pod for sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, your big thing is the quality, the texture. I think that's the biggest improvement. The most noticeable improvement for me as well is really around, quote unquote structure, which incorporates sharpness, clarity, detail, all those really important elements at the end of the day. And those are the things that I think can really elevate the image at this point in the game, right? Because we were talking about how do you improve image quality from here. It's really just minute stuff like that. And one other tip while we're talking about it, if you are creating images and maybe you're focused on doing some stuff post-processing, the 3 big things from a photographer's perspective of what attracts somebody's eyes within an image are going to be sharpness, contrast, and lighting. So if you've got an area that you're trying to really highlight within that, those are the important details. Now, you can obviously do that in post, and it's probably easier to control. But just something to keep in mind as you're, navigating 6.1. I think for me, some of the disappointments are still the things that didn't get fixed. It is the hands and legs. I don't really see much of an improvement there. I also think with smush faces did get a little bit better, but I don't see a huge improvement either,
Agree. Yeah.
And so I think in combination with that leaves a little bit, to be desired. Same with, things like cigarettes and bottles like we talked about last time. I want to run some more tests on that too, but I don't think that's heavily improved yet either. And so the real question is, do things like that have just sort of been these thorns in our side for so long get fixed in V7? Because I think 6.2 is going to be just that extra layer on top of 6.1 to refine it and serve a different but slight purpose as well. And then that next big jump, which we're talking about, is really V7. But we'll see.
We'll see. There's some good stuff, right? I think even, I don't know if they mentioned this as a highlighted update. I'm sure they did. They did image quality, but definitely the color it pops more. But also, from any of our designer friends out there, the contrast and the saturation is definitely improved. You can tell right away when I look at these V6 images, and I'm thinking to myself, how much better can they get? And then I look at them next to each other, even running them on the same seed, and saying, damn, okay, the contrast is much heavier, which I like, because that's my style, though, to your point, is I like a lot of difference between the dark and light areas in a photo. So that one was really impressive. The saturation's also impressive, where it doesn't go overboard. Doesn't look like it's HDR tuned to the point of where you have orange skin and neon features, but the saturation improved, the clarity, the sharpness, all of that definitely improved. Are you going to notice it unless you're really looking for it? Probably not. But when we'll show some examples. We pulled some side by side that seemingly insignificant, but it makes a big difference. The other thing that I noticed too, I don't know if you noticed this, was there's some upgrades in composition. There's more. I think there's more complex composition, especially if you're prompting for it. Things like vertical lines, leading lines, things like that. They're way more dynamic in this one, and I don't know if that's just a increase in data that they added to the model or whatnot, but I noticed that it was a lot more visually eye-popping than maybe V6 was in those areas. But I don't know if you even prompted for anything like that.
Well, I was actually going really deep on camera angles again, just to kind of see how that consistency looks, and then also, are there other angles that maybe I'm not thinking of that I haven't used as much, or just revisiting that as a whole, to your point, like the ability to create unique images that stand apart from the rest. We've already touched on some of the things, but obviously camera angles is something I'm always thinking about just as a photographer. How can I get an interesting angle? So yeah, I've noticed some of the stuff like that as well. I think I'm glad you brought that up. I think that maybe the other big thing that's been a disappointment with 6.1 so far to me is the coherence. I was expecting a bigger jump there. And just in the things that I've run, I haven't really noticed much of a difference. And here's the thing. I feel like Midjourney's coherence was already pretty good in the sense that you could have a pretty long prompt, and as long as your stylized wasn't too high, you could get it to follow along pretty well. And even if not, maybe you have an image reference to supplement with the prompt, to get it there with the coherence. But I don't really notice a big difference with the coherence. And in fact, I think just in running some of the same prompts I've run in 6 and in 6.1, it's sort of gotten too far off track using the same, parameters and everything like that. And so I'm not sure if that's a static thing right now, or if that improves as more and more images get created and more data and insights come in from 6.1.
Quick question. Did you go back and run any V4 prompts with V6 or V6.1?
No.
Ooh. It's my favorite pastime is let me go back all the way to the beginning to find all the images that I love, and then let me rerun them again and see if they work, because it's just I can't get away from it. There's some you have your favorites out of the 100,000, where to find them, but
I don't know, bro.
Come on.
There's just too many now. I don't even scroll back too far now anymore. It's just it's so ridiculous how many images are in there.
You got to do the Spider-Man mask.
Stupid.
Come on. I know.
Yeah,
I remember the Spider-Man mask was in the glass case, maybe, or something like that. I remember that image. Because that's the progression picture, right? We got to see what it looked like from V3 to now, right? There's a lot. But I think what's interesting is that the photography, there's if you're going for photorealism, there's some subtle differences. But what I've noticed is on the art side of things, way sharper, cleaner, art in that sense. So typically I have this one, I use this type of face, right, with a bunch of comic book illustrations on it for just about everything I do. It's on every cover of every product I've ever had, every presentation. I always use that same one just to see kind of how much reality bending we can do between the realisticness of the human face and then putting the art on top of the face to like layer it in. This one, I was like blown away. I did not think it was going to be this good considering where V5 or V6 was. And I think there's a lot better, in terms of like the creativity and the detail in that finer art style. So I was impressed with that. I'll show some of those images where I was like, damn, I didn't even have to do anything. I just prompted it to like the same prompt and put my P code in it. And I was like, okay, like that's, that shocked me to my core. But the other thing is, we can definitely talk about this, is the upscalers. My biggest gripe with Midjourney and their upscalers, why I keep going back to tools like Magnific, is it just softens things too much. Like it softens a lot of the details. The features get too like polished. I would like to, if we're gonna upscale, either one, I don't need it as big. I just rather have some sharper clarity, like grain. If I'm zooming in on a face, I want pores, I want skin cracks, I want blemishes and discoloration, like what you can get on Magnific, because every time I upscale, I'm like, it looks good, but it's just so soft. If that makes sense.
Are you running the subtle upscale or the creative?
Both. So
okay, because I feel like the creative's got that. Like I feel like when you just described that, I immediately thought creative upscaler. But like the subtle upscaler, to me, it does refine the details. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to look at that. Like,
might just be what I'm upscaling.
Maybe. Yeah. Like I don't know, but I think the creative, definitely that's the case. The creative upscale I didn't really use a whole lot because of that. But recently, like I heard this on office hours just briefly yesterday, and I heard this again like for the first time really, I think like within the last week, about using the creative upscaler to fix some distortions, like in faces and in hands. Sometimes it actually corrects it, the face or the hands. I had no idea because, to be honest, I just, when I ran creative upscaler enough times, I was just like, I just don't like this look. I already know what I like. I'm going to do, I'm just going to do the subtle upscale and stick with that. And that was what I did. Sometimes I would run both just to kind of see what it changes. But I did give that test a go a few times in V6, and it worked quite well. Like using that creative upscaler to like fix minor things. So if it's like a far enough away shot, maybe you've got like a aspect ratio of 16:9. Maybe you've got a smushed face, distorted face. Maybe something from the side is just a little bit off. It can correct things to a certain degree. Like it's not going to save your image. If there are sort of complexities to it, or if there's too much you're asking of it, but it does make some of those subtle differences.
So speaking of subtle and creative, the nice little like overnight update that I didn't even notice probably for like a week was that like remix came back within the toolbar, which I was happy about. I didn't have to go into repaint or reframe and then edit the prompt. It was, because we missed that remix subtle and remix strong for a while there. That was nice to get back. I also liked a little bit of the customizable tool panel on the right-hand side, on the website, which I was like, oh, hell yeah, thank you for all this stuff back. I liked it. I'm a visual person. I don't want this stuff hidden. I like it all there. That's just me personally. This isn't the sexiest conversation topic, but getting remix back is great because there's oftentimes like, there's a little trick. I don't know if anyone does it or not. It's something that I've always found useful, is when you remix, don't change anything. Just hit like remix strong and hit same prompt and hit enter. Oftentimes it just exaggerates everything that's in your prompt. So like that one to me has always been a good way to get, instead of just hitting reroll or upping the stylized value or, upping the chaos value, just hitting remix strong, no changes, nothing, just run it that way. Oftentimes I get some really cool stuff. Like
I think you told me about that. That was interesting. I never really thought about that. Was never like a huge remix guy, but I think that's just another thing to play around with and explore. I'm gonna share my screen really quick for those of you that are just listening. We're just gonna show like a few things. Here's the customizable panel that Rory just mentioned. So for example, what you would essentially do is click this more options, and you can select or deselect anything you want here, right? So if I want to hide zoom and pan and remix, I can. So actually, I didn't see that remix came back till you just said that, to be honest, because I didn't have it selected. So I think that's great to know. I mean, I like to have everything there as well. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. The second thing I want to point out is like this particular example, because this is not perfect, but essentially what we're showing is an image that looks like an ad, but it's got a lot of text on it. And so this was the initial image, and I just wanted to prompt along with that image reference just to see how good the text got, because we're asking for a lot of things here. I mean, there are like 6 or 7 different text things in this image, right, with arrows and everything. So I thought that was a pretty big ask, to see if we could get that right in Midjourney and see where that goes. I thought this did a pretty damn good job. Like, it's not perfect, but like if you were to do this even in V6, this would be a hot fucking mess. I mean,
swipe
this
up
looks
to shot
pretty
sage down there in the bottom right, like that nailed basically everything.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
yeah. So like interesting.
Possible.
Like this is probably the best example I got, but like all these other ones are pretty solid. Like again, I don't know that these are super usable just yet, but I think when we get into V7, dude, this might be there. So text is definitely something that I think's improved. I don't use a lot of text in my images, but I think it's great for if you're trying to throw a brand in there, or a couple words, or even maybe phrases now. I think it's there, so it's definitely worth playing around with. Have you used that at all?
I haven't been utilizing it in that sense, but I have been just trying straight up text just to see how that would work. It's been fairly on point for me. Like I was, not to go off of Midjourney here, like when Runway Gen 3 came out and the text was so clean, I was like, wow, this is impressive. Like for video to have text this clean, I'm like, what's, Midjourney, obviously they don't value it as much. So, it's rarely talked about, I think. It's just, we all know there's going to be subtle differences. It takes a long time to get this stuff perfectly right the way you want to. So just edit it in post-production. But the text for me, I've seen it like even on some of the cars, if you like Porsche, right? Like when I was prompting Porsche, like you get like the Porsche written like across the back of the car, like the way that it would look like that, in a real photo. So that was impressive to me. I'm curious to see how, they're going to be able to, if you're going to be able to do something in V7 where it's like add text after the fact. Like I wonder if you're going to be able to basically either one, like prompt that in, like if that was an ad, like paint and then add text in like the way you'd want to, or I don't know if they'll go that route, because it doesn't seem like they want to be focused on marketing stuff. Apparently they're not built for marketers. This is for fun. BS. It's, we're doing a lot of stuff here. So it's interesting because V7 coming up, naturally everyone's excited about video. Everyone's excited about 3D and the possibilities of what that is. But I think they're really just trying to make, they want you to build your own world. If we're transitioning into kind of what we want from that stuff, right? Like I want to build my own world. I want to walk into it. Is the medium going to be is the medium going to be a computer screen or a laptop screen, moving forward, or is it going to be something else? Is it going to be VR? Is it going to be, AR? Whatever it could be. It's interesting because, we're thinking about this all in the terms of what the or what like the hardware is, right? Like we're just used to 2D flat screen.
That's great. That's a great point.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm curious to see where they're going to go and what they're going to emphasize, because it doesn't seem like text has ever been like really one of their top priorities. It's kind of like they threw us a bone.
I think you're right. Good point too about the world, like building your own world. Like that's something you and I have talked about previously, but that actually came up again yesterday in Midjourney's office hours. And by the way, guys, if you didn't know this, Midjourney does an office hours every week. Now we're U.S. time, so I'm gonna say it's like Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time for Rory and I. We're both on the East Coast, but essentially that's a weekly thing where they give you all the updates. They comb through those. They take questions. They allow some people to come up and ask questions directly. But somebody did ask David yesterday, tell us again the ultimate vision of what Midjourney is, and he sort of reiterated your point. It's building your own world. And so he did mention that again and sort of like, validated that again. It's not something that we were just sort of thinking about. He did confirm that. So just an interesting anecdote there.
Yeah, because they have thrown out like randomly on office hours, like, what do you guys think about actual hardware? And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? So, I see that as like a curiosity as to where we can go and like either one, control the space that you're generating in, or like develop the space that you're generating in. I think that's it's exciting because who knows? I mean, we talked about this on a podcast yesterday with Chris Branch, who was like, the Ready Player One sort of idea where you could go in and just start to build everything around you, step into an entirely new world and live in it and actually do and create in real time. Like it's like God mode, so that's very, very intriguing if that's where it's going to go. And if that's the jump, 3D and video, well, like, do we have to use any other tools? I mean,
You mentioned you read that book. I haven't read the Ready Player One book. I've seen the
So
movie.
worth it.
Obviously, the books are almost always better than the movies. But I get so hung up on, I would say, like the first half of that movie because it's so focused around this world, this ecosystem, this galaxy even of just sort of like, I guess, the quote unquote metaverse, right? Like it's just fascinating because, something as small as the main character's like in this small little, I think he's in a vehicle, right? Like he's in a car or something and he's got his own, back of a van. And he's got, his own headset gear, everything, little movement, 360 movement track pad, on his feet. And so he can move in any direction. And then like all those little things that take place across the metaverse in terms of the games and meeting people and buying things and the whole cultural society that exists with it. I mean, it's just fascinating, dude. I mean, it almost brings a little bit of the little kid out of me when I watch that first half of that film.
Dude, you got to read the book. And this is not, this is for any of the other, nerds out there like this. The book is so, like, the movie doesn't even make sense in comparison to the book because it's not the same storyline. I know this from being in product licensing, just like the IP to license all the pop culture references they utilized would have been a nightmare. So they had to change the story around. But there's some really cool ideas in there as to what it could be. Like, there was different challenges to unlock, little like gifts or Easter eggs or things like that. And like some of them was like you had to step into a movie that was actually running like in loop consistently and then play the actor and say the lines exactly on cue and like act out the entire scene for you to like get to the next level, like things like that. Going into like a Breakfast Club world. So everything is like based around the 80s and 90s or the 80s really. And it's just like all 80s pop culture, 80s music. It's legit of like an idea, like a thought starter because you can see it happening. You can see it now that if we can start to build this stuff, here's my personalized style code. How about I go build an entire planet? Like you can have, I'm sure in any different way, shape or form, go in there with your personalized style or your, type of prompting and create a planet. It's so weird. But them focusing on, you start to recognize them focusing on 3D. 3D is something that a lot of the other image generators, video generators, there's probably a couple 3D tools, but not in an immersive sense. So, that seems to be, we talk about this too. They zig when everyone else is, zagging. Everyone's focused on, we got to get image to video to video, whatever it might be. They're like, we're going to do 3D. And I haven't heard of anyone really trying to get into that space, and maybe I'm missing it, but that to me is the most interesting, is that it's just, that's like, you can tell 3D is a priority. And that's where, you can build video off of 3D, but the capabilities in 3D is insane. If they can
Do you think we see any 3D before end of the year?
I don't think so. The good thing is they're very open about their dev schedule, but they're also, kind of flaky on their dev schedule. So it's like, 6.1 will be out next week. And then it's like 4 weeks later. They do this often. I don't really take too much stock in it until they do the random 3 p.m. on a Tuesday drop of, Midjourney 6 is here. Like, have fun.
Yeah. Well, hey, how about, like, what do you think about us getting into some comparisons? Like, do you want to maybe jump in? I know you pulled some quick examples that we can maybe visually show those that are following along on YouTube or Spotify where the video streaming portion of this is applicable. But, let's just kind of take a look at, some of these differences that we've encountered and just kind of talk through them a bit.
Yeah, so running this stuff, again, if anyone doesn't know how to like compare the models, the one thing to do is basically, and I can also show this on here, is if you're going to go, and let's just say this is version 6, and here's our hand. If you want to have a really accurate comparison, you go here, you copy the seed value, copy this, and then when you prompt, let's just use the same exact prompt. We'll do 6.1 -- seed, paste the value. So we'll get a very accurate comparison because it's going to start from the same like starting point. So we'll get a really good look at what the differences are. So that's exactly what I did on these images over here. So we'll take a look. So here's 6, right? We look at this, the skin, fairly smooth, right? Like the tattoos, kind of undetailed, just a mishmash of stuff. Face is a little bit smooth, maybe not completely detailed, but when we run it through 6.1, like you can tell the difference right away in the color. Like look at the difference in the face and like the coloration on the face, like the lighting shining on his face, that's different. There's a lot more depth there. Like we're talking about subtle differences, but you know, this is what these improvements look like. Even like the light on the shoulder over here. Like there's a nice bright spot. We have this darker skin tone. That's not here. It's kind of just all washed out in 6. So we're looking at little things like that, but then you also look at, you know, like the jewelry. Like it might not be perfect, just using this for example purposes. You know, there's some good stuff here. Then we go over here and just the texture is just way more defined. There's way more going on. This is the exact, as you can tell, it's like the exact same image basically. But this one is just upgraded. Like even the look on her face, like it's way more natural from a lighting perspective. You have blemishes in the skin tone. It's not totally perfect, which everything is what looking for there. Now,
before you move on to that one, going back to that other one, to your point about lighting too, look at the lighting and where it falls on the faces on the left, right? It's shining on the guy's right side, and you're getting light shining on the left side.
Yeah.
Right? Which probably doesn't make sense. It could happen depending on the setting, but it's probably not likely. Versus if you go to the image on the right, that light is falling on the same side.
Exactly. You can
know
tell
what I
it
mean?
was upgraded in that sense.
Yes.
Often subtle detail. There's actually like a kneecap anatomy there. Most of the time, I feel like the knees are pretty weird. It's a random thought.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Random thought. But this one, you know, probably a little bit less noticeable. But again, from like that washing out and then clarity standpoint, like we can look at this and you can see how it's a little bit darker. I wanted to go with a darker aesthetic to see how it would affect. You know, this is V6. V6.1, we definitely have more from the light and the depth. You can see when we're talking about contrast, like the difference between this dark portion of her face here and the light coming from the left side. Like you see like a nice break in that. Over here, it's kind of just, you know, the dark is not as dark and the bright is not as bright, which is, you know, showing us that we're getting more contrast. The tattoos are they have a little bit more shading and depth in the lines. These are kind of flat. You can see like this would, you know, I'd rather get a tattoo from whoever did this one than whoever did this. This one looks like a washed out tattoo. You look at both of those. So that's what's interesting here, right? And again, pulled this from a contrast perspective or just clarity and detail. Same prompt, same seed, just different versions. You can see in V6 like, all this background detail, right? Like again, the contrast between dark and light, super high. You know, even in the water, the texture in the water, the light on the water, the ripples all the way across. You know, here we have some flatter water, not as much going on. Down here we have some subtle splashes, but nothing, the background doesn't come close to what it is down here, like in terms of like detail. So
6.1 almost feels like you took that photo and you already did post processing on it.
Yeah.
And now, right, you're going to post it somewhere like that. That's sort of, I think one of the bigger changes is it almost looks like 6 feels a little bit more of like the raw image, whereas 6.1 feels like it's done, you know?
Yeah. Just impressed. Like I look at some of this stuff where I like everything, especially with my P code. I get a lot of contrast to begin with, so to see more of it. But this is like the impressive stuff. And I know everyone's like, well, I don't even look at this stuff, right? Like the way the light is coming in and shining on the water, creating the ripple effect across the water too, all the way up, and just how it's flat here, like that's a major difference. The leaf texture and the depth of the leaves, right? Like it's not a full like deep depth of field, but you can identify texture throughout the entirety of it, even if we zoom in. So that was impressive. And this one, I think, shows a lot more of the detail. Like, and what we're talking about with quality was the textures.
Yeah.
Right, so this one here, V6, you know, we're prompting for horse hooves walking through the mud. You get some nice mud splatter and some finer details in here. You know, you get some mud grains on the shin and on the hoof. But when we look at this one, I mean, there's just you have light shining off of this, creating this crazy effect. We have a lot more texture.
Yeah, it's wild, dude.
Even some of these small pieces here, background texture, right? Like it's not like as fuzzy and blurred out as this is. So when we're talking about there's not a major upgrade, these are the things that we're looking for. But like to me, this is a major upgrade. Like even the color saturation. Look at the difference in the green here and the green here. Like this is obviously a lighter, more vibrant green than this is. Now, even with the mud, right? The mud has this beautiful texture slash, rich tone to it. Whereas here, even though we're walking in the water, it's kind of a little light and faded. So these are small differences, right? And even in the hands, like this is where I saw some of the bigger differences from like a real like clarity and texture standpoint. Even in the rope and things like that. V6 still was pretty good here, but you can see it's kind of not as great in terms of like the hand definition as over here. We have all these little subtle cracks on the hand, the wrinkles on the skin.
I love that rope too.
Right?
Look at the rope. I mean, you could just feel like the coarseness of the rope, whereas in the other one you can't.
Nope. This one's kind of like you see the strings. It's not. You can see that it's braided. But even the jean texture, like these thin, looks like thin weaves. Here you have like this rough denim texture.
Yes.
Right? Like you know what that jean feels like. Right. So that was a couple comparisons I pulled just to show you finer details. Because I think, it often gets, we look at these things and it's just like, yes, this is great. This is not great. But you can see like the subtle differences when you use seed to compare some of this stuff. Hope there wasn't the most vibrant images you could pull, but I think it just like
no, dude, that was great. I mean, the big takeaways are dynamic range. You've got a lot of that, which I know you really love in the image, which is just that value range between the darkest darks, the lightest lights, and capturing all those stops in between. And the texture to me stood out too. Like I was working on a couple like macro shots yesterday. And same thing. It was a lot around dirt. Actually, it was like a client project. I'll just kind of show this too, because these are very similar to yours, but maybe just like even more focused in. Like,
oh wow!
I was just looking at like the skin, right? And I mean, it's insane. And then you've got sort of this caked on mud or dirt. Like that stood out to me. The shirt. I mean, again, you can feel. I feel this appeals to more of the entire emotional spectrum because you're able to capture all those characteristics and attributes within there. Let me see if I've got.
Go back to that. Go back to that real quick. I just want to see the child's face with the drip on it. Because sometimes if you've ever noticed this, right, like it has a problem with water on face or dirt on a face. Like it either cakes up in a very unnatural way, or like it's just a drip of water might not be like gravitationally correct, like where it's not dripping down, it's like dripping to the side, where it looks weird. Like that's insane. Those eyelashes too.
Eyelashes, I think, got better. And guys, if you're not following along with us right now, we're showing a particular photo of like a macro shot of somebody's face. So we're just really zoomed in on the details here. But I mean, you've got texture. All those little peach fuzz hairs. You've got, to your point, like sort of this water, this moisture that's here. The eyelashes look better. Look at these eyebrows, bro.
I mean, the light glistening off the water in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So that's wild, and then I'll just give you one other example. This, like something like this too was kind of interesting. This is just sort of like a macro shot of a tennis racket hitting a tennis ball on the ground. There's dirt flying off, right?
The fuzz on the tennis ball, even that.
The fuzz on the tennis ball, like what's in focus versus what's not has gotten better. Like there's still some discrepancy here, but like not unless you're really trying to be nitpicky about it. But geez, I mean, like the level of detail and texture that you can get now, I think is something to play with. And I think like with that specifically in mind, do some macro shots, or
yes.
something like Rory's, had with, sort of that low level on the footing or the ground, or, just really incorporating more of like the scenic elements into your shots too. And I think that's where you'll notice some of the little Easter egg updates,
So let me show this one for now. When I was talking about kind of like the finer art side of things, when people want to go into the, not just photorealism, but like get a little bit, more, let's call it creative. So this was, when I get into here, see if I can get down. This is what really started to blow my mind, was these images. Like just the level of detail that is coming in on this, like just the lines and how it's able to calculate that. Like I would never think that did not happen in the last couple
Open that up in a new tab and zoom in.
Let's see.
I want to see this too. I mean, this is.
I mean, even like the lip detail, right? Like you have all this, and it's maybe not like completely perfect, but just like look at all of the
lips
details.
I think
here.
maybe lips got better. Maybe also teeth. I don't know if I've seen enough yet, but with 6, how you'd sometimes get. Like, you can't see a lot of their teeth, but the ones that you can see, they're kind of in the shadow, and you're like, they're kind of jacked, But
like a sideways tooth somewhere.
Yeah. But, like, unless you're really looking for it, you probably don't notice it. But, like, I think that might have also gotten a little bit of a fix, too. But, dang, look at that,
Because look at this.
I mean,
even the skin, you have the skin cracks underneath it.
Underneath. That's a great point.
Like here. Like even the lip texture with like the subtle glow from the light, but underneath. So that to me was like, what the hell? And then, even rolling through some of these, right? I'm just like blown away that I can make art on people, and actually make it pretty intense. Like this one here screwed up the eyes, but like just the level of sketch drawing, even in these little tabs or these little spaces, like here, this is a lot going on. There's a lot going on the lips. There's a lot going on the hands. I was crazy impressed by this because there's, could you imagine?
Look at the mouth on that, the lips, the teeth. I mean, that's just fascinating.
Right? It's like this one, again, because we're going from a little bit more of an art perspective here, going to have some, anatomically exaggerated stuff, but also, you have the skin bumps up here or just like the pores, whatever you want to call them. It was just really, really eye-opening to get stuff like this, because I've tried to prompt stuff like this a lot. And it doesn't necessarily come out all the time, but really crazy that they can go ahead and do this right now. Because out of all the things I tested, like these were the biggest jumps to me. I wasn't expecting this level of jump for that kind of fine detail. The other stuff, I can get it, but wasn't expecting that at all.
We had some really good examples we just pulled too. I mean, we didn't really prep those in advance, so I think those really did a good job of illustrating some of the stuff that we're talking about. When we look ahead to, I don't know, V7, I mean, my first question is, what's your take? Did we get it before end of year? Yes or no? One word answer only.
No.
Yeah.
January 1st.
Yeah. How hard are people working between Thanksgiving and Christmas? That's, I guess, maybe the key question, and man, it would be great to have V7 before then, but I think this gives us enough to chew on for a little while. Like the images, again, not to like hone in specifically on photorealism here, but with that in mind and what I'm using it for, I mean, Jesus, dude. I mean, just it's there, like, yes, there are still some annoying things like we've talked about that aren't perfect yet. I'm willing to work around those for what we're getting out of Midjourney right now.
We're really splitting hairs on some things, like when we're talking about this stuff. But I'm amped that my perceived initial run, I was like, oh, it's not that much different. But, the other thing is that I don't know if you've run a lot without your P code. Because I was doing it without my personalization code, I was like, this is, it's not as crazy. But when I started using my personalization code more, which apparently got an update as well, more dynamic. I don't know if you've been getting multiple codes. I have like 7 now. I don't know where they came from. I'm going to have to test those against each other to see what the differences are.
I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty as to why, but the purpose behind each one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so to your point, like I think I've also seen probably like maybe 5 or 6 in total. And that's without, doing any additional ratings or anything like that, right? So that was just status quo. Things were changing. If you were prompting in Midjourney in the last week, you probably noticed the same thing. We didn't really have a lot of answers as to why that happened, which to me kind of caught me by surprise because I loved my P code. I loved I loved what I had, but also like during that period of time, I was just like, man, I just want to use mine. And then, when this launched too, that also reset. I don't know totally, but I do think that reset some of the personalization. So I spent some additional time yesterday rating some images, liking some images on the Explore page, trying to, feed the beast, so to speak. And I really do like where the P code's at right now. I did see something along the lines of your personalization code will change if you do rate additional images. So if I've got one P code right now, if I were to go in there today and rate, I don't know, we'll just say like 20 to 30 new images, I should have a new P code after that. I don't know if that's immediately or like later on in the day, but I will have a new P code. I did notice that yesterday too.
Because I was trying to it was interesting when I started noticing it was when I was basically trying to develop a workflow to create your own style code. Still haven't totally ironed that out, but I've gotten pretty close. But there's like my code started changing when I was doing that because it was so outside of what I'm normally prompting. So I don't know if it's starting to take into account like what your prompting trends are as well. This is total speculation. I don't know.
That's kind of where my head went too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was like, wait. You kind of have an idea of what it looks like. Like I knew mine was like LDJ something, and then out of nowhere it's like 2WZF35. I'm like, what the hell happened here? And then I was like, wait. I started going looking back. I'm like, I have like 10 of these now, or like 6 of these, whatever the hell. They're just like different on every sort of theme that I'm prompting. So I don't know how they're going about it, but I'm also going to want to check I'm going to have to start running prompts against each other. Now we can also do weighting on those too. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make if it's all kind of the same style, but it's interesting because those style versions, which I have to go back to, I always forget that those are part of it. The SV parameter, and rip through V1, 2, 3, 4 on some of this new stuff on 6 just to see what's going on. You almost forget about some of this stuff.
You do.
Yeah.
You absolutely forget. That's a really good thing to bring up though with the personalization, because that is going to undergo changes. I don't know, when the next update is from here. I kind of do wish it would just kind of be static, or maybe we could even pick the personalization code, like what it is. I'm going to throw that thing on my license plate, bro. I mean, put
tattoo
it on there,
Let's tattoo it on our face, like right on the forehead. That's really all I am now at this point.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
I'm also interested to see like where they go with the personalization codes and if you're going to be able to catalog them. Like there was always a way to catalog in Discord, which I really liked. Again, I used to use those preferred options set, which would be nice. And Tuner was great, the way that you could keep your tuned codes. And I think I saw this on office hours and not focusing on organization as much, because there'd be a few things that would be helpful, right? Like that would be helpful to have like a catalog or like a drop down or something where you could save, because I think what I read, they were 1% of people are using folders. Like I think that was it. So I mean, I don't know about you. I use smart folders all the time.
I know that's hard to believe. Like David said that yesterday. They want to make improvements on the organization side. They know about it. Obviously, a lot of people brought it up. It's just not high up on the priority list. So I understand that.
Well, what do you got for requests then for coming up? I know there's some features that you probably want.
Well, I don't know this is like my number one, but this just kind of like hit me out of nowhere yesterday. And I just thought it'd be so cool if we could put in a prompt with no aspect ratio, and it would give you the best ratio for the prompt.
I dig that.
Right?
I like that. That's next level. You're playing chess. You're playing chess right now. It's playing
because
checkers.
we've talked about that. Like I don't know how many people know this, but we'll just reiterate it again. It's just depending on the prompt, that can be a big difference in what you get back. Not only the composition, but the details, whether it captures everything or not. I notice it a lot too with camera angles. Mm-hmm. Depending on the aspect ratio, it may not give you that camera angle. So you have to think about in the back of your mind with all these things when it comes to aspect ratio, where does it get the data and information from? Well, it's like the most common use cases that occur in those aspect ratios. So for example, cinematic stills, something like a 16:9:7:3, something like that is going to give you the best results for cinematic stills. So I just think that would be a really cool thing where you don't have to think too hard about the output. And obviously there are ways to reframe it anyway, even if you didn't like sort of the aspect ratio that I gave you. But I would almost love for it to give me the best possible version of what I'm prompting regardless of aspect ratio. Would be dope.
It's a good one. I like that. I like that a lot. I always want simple features, right? Like I don't need anything crazy. Is there a way to export multiple photos, like at least like combine them into one collage image, like or share like I would love to have like not like a portfolio page, but just be able to, let's just say I wanted to send you 10 images instead of downloading all of them, combining them, sending them to you as like, pull them into Figma, group them, download them, export them, send it to you. If I could just grab like 10 images, like ding, 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 then here's like a link, share, and then like bang, you can have the link with the prompts and everything. Like that would be really easy. It doesn't seem that hard, but that would be great. I would really appreciate that because again, this is a social community, right, guys? Like we want to share our work. How do we make sharing our work easier? Also, it'd be nice for, sure, that'd be great for social. If you're just going to go share this stuff, here's a link, here's all the prompts, do what you want with it. Instead of, and bring it into the Midjourney environment, you just hit the copy prompt or whatever, and then go from there. I know the website's probably like, the usability is more important than some of these functions, and getting these new models trained is probably more important. But
yeah, but Christmas is coming up in 6 months, and this is on our wish list, bro. So I mean, this is a safe place. We can throw this stuff out there. I also keep going back to, maybe you brought this up. I can't remember where I heard this. I'm pretty sure it was you. The idea that you could do like a repaint and almost like a smart object selection within a repaint. That'd be fire. Like especially where we're at with hands, legs, accessories, any, really important object that exists within the image, rather than just having the lasso or the square tool, that smart selection. I feel like that would also really benefit the model in a lot of ways too, because it's got a very defined space to work within. It's not trying to appease to the quality of the selection that it's been given, if that makes sense. So I think that's fascinating.
Also, another simple request. Can we get rid of the size requirement for repaint? Because every time I try to do something small, I have to go like select other random areas just so it regenerates, which, I don't know, seems super annoying because talk about taking me off platform. I'll go into Photoshop and do that in 2 seconds.
Did I show you the trick for that? Did I show you
what
that
is that?
trick?
No, please do.
Let's just do one real quick. So let me share this. Let's go to the upscale version of this, right? Okay, repaint. Let's just say I want to change. So for those of you that can't see, we're just going to give a quick example of this. Let's just say I want to change this. Don't like that. Okay. Try to run it. Okay. Select more. Now, you can just run these pixels on the side.
And
I
boom. Like that.
Now I can submit it. So depending on like the aspect ratio, it's either the side or the top. I think if it's like a 16:9, you're going to have to do that on the top. But that's a nice way to get around it that I found. So, just a little Easter egg there while we're talking about it.
I like that one because this one that always like upsets me, especially when I have a busy photo and I don't want to take some of the other stuff out of it, and I just have to like find random areas that are like flat and just one color. Like, repaint this.
100%.
The other thing is, I think they mentioned it. I don't know if they did mention it. Maybe I'm just dreaming this up. Is the zoom in feature, which I think would be awesome. If we could do that. Yeah.
Give me that. Give me that.
That'd be real nice because I've always wanted to, or just like isolating certain areas to work on. Like if I could go into like a certain area of the image and like be a little bit more finely detailed inside of it. Well, I guess this is where the 3D is going to come in. That would be, because I've always had problems, and you can tell me if you think otherwise. Like repaint to me is good for fixing errors. Like I've never had like awesome luck adding additional things in there.
Ever, you know what? That would be a great improvement. I would like to see. For V7, you're absolutely right. I mean, repaint is powerful as it is. It could be 10 times more powerful if that got fixed, right? Because sometimes you have to run things 10, 20 times to maybe get one of the things that you're asking to put in. And usually I don't get it and I stop. I'm like, hell with this. Like,
right?
I'm done trying it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only time I'm able to get good edits is when I select a very large area. So like if it's something that I'm like, okay, like someone's holding like a drink in their hand, but like the drink's all jacked up, like I'll have to just select like half the image where the drink is, and then that'll get me something good. But if I try just to select like the drink in the hand, like it's never good. It never comes out. I have to do it like 30 times. It's honestly the bigger the area, the better the regen for me.
Yeah.
But I would love to see that feature be a little bit more, I don't want to say worked on, but just like a little bit more attention, because it is so good when you need it. Like you do need, because you get so many bangers, right? That are like, this is awesome, but there's something wrong.
There's just one thing that's just like driving you
that
nuts.
Way. Yeah. And it'd just be like, all right, if I could just redo this. And sometimes like the fidelity goes down when you repaint, I don't know if you ever noticed that.
Does it? No.
It's like sometimes, I'll repaint or I'll try to add something in.
Just the selection or overall?
No, in the selection, wherever I'm repainting, and let's just say I wanted to change, like I'm selecting the rim of a car, and I wanted to change the rim itself, and then like I repaint it. It feels like it's like version 5.2 is getting injected into that repaint, not 6. So
Interesting.
It's weird, but that's those are things that I try to go then take into Photoshop and do it.
I'll have to look out for that.
Yeah. It's weird. It's only when I try to add things. It's never when I try to like remove stuff. When I'm like, yeah, get rid of this, change this. It's like if I was trying to say, take this gold necklace and turn it into like one of those 90s rope necklaces that everyone got in like, on vacation in the 90s.
Bring those back.
The little seashells like hanging into it.
Oh, man. If you didn't have your 8th grade or your high school picture with a seashell necklace on, what were you even doing?
A lot of hair gel.
Little frosted
spike.
Tips, even maybe? I don't know. I'm
going to go prompt some frosted tips after this.
Maybe a popped collar. Maybe I'm just talking about myself. I have no idea.
I'm just thinking like 90s Justin Timberlake right now and what that used to look like, Yeah. Luckily, every May we get the "It's Gonna Be May" meme just to remind us of how ridiculous it was back then.
I love that, and I love when June's over and it's July. June's over, Julying. I just love that. I mean, I'm a dad now. I can laugh at that. But
we're allowed to, right? It's appropriate.
Okay, I have one last one for
dude.
maybe like a feature that I just thought of. I don't know how important it is to me, but I think it would make a lot of sense if 3D is this big priority, and that is like, why can't we zoom out farther than 2x without having to keep doing it? It would be dope to just do like a 4x zoom out or an 8x. And I know probably why is because just like with pan or when you zoom out maybe multiple times, you just start to get real funky things in there. But if they were to correct that, and maybe they even have to do that before this 3D thing, because if you really think about like just incorporating an entire spatial environment or ecosystem, like you kind of need to have all those details figured out. That could be super, super interesting too, especially as we're starting to talk about like using Midjourney images for AI image gen, for example. And I know you do a lot of that. Like things like that, I think would be super, super cool to have.
Yeah, I just keep going back to because I thought the way Photoshop did it was so smart in terms of the generative like expand as well, where I could just drag the photo, either one to add some space on the right, press generate, or I could basically
same aspect ratio too, right?
Yeah,
like that's the important part. Yeah,
even that, or like how we were talking about cropping images last week. Like let's just say I didn't want to, I wanted to pan and zoom out at the same time. So adding some space to the left and also zooming out. But really, like if I'm in the center of the image like this, but I don't want if I zoom out for me to be in the center anymore. If I could put myself over to the right and then zoom out so it looks like an off-centered composition. Like that would be
without changing the aspect ratio.
Yeah. So
you just brought up something too. Multi-requests.
Yeah.
So pan and zoom at the same time.
Yes.
Things that you could stack together.
Because Discord. I forget if we could do that in Discord. I know you could.
Remember.
You could zoom and aspect ratio change in Discord at the same time. That was a big one. But no, that would be legit.
Because you think of like the I guess the more tedious quote unquote challenges that still exist in Midjourney, and it's like when you go to work on one image and you have to reframe it or zoom or repaint and then upscale, you have to go through different generations each time. It'd be great to stack some things.
Dude, definitely. It would be so nice to have it seems like we're talking a lot about repaint here and zoom and some of these other functions that have kind of been like they were awesome when they came out, but they haven't really updated that much since then. It's a nice piece to have, but they haven't done anything with it, which it's not a knock on them. They have bigger things to fry. But like again, these are because we're such goddamn nerds and we're in here all the time that we have little like it could be better here.
Hey, can we put that face you just made as the thumbnail for this?
that probably would work. Been seeing a lot of taking note now, guys. Now that that we're doing this on YouTube, looking at thumbnails and the funny face or the weird face is a big hook on the visual side. So
big hook,
might be seeing some real ugly photos of me and Drew coming out soon, and might have to take them purposely, which is weird, but.
Who do you think's got more gray hair, you or me right now?
Oh, dude, come on. This is just because my hair is short right now. You got a lot of look at that reflecting off the sun. How do I prompt that? I'm a little bit blown out though. So this thing's real gray right now. It's starting happening in 24.
That's a mean salt and pepper right there, baby.
Do you even have gray hair?
Oh yeah. What?
Come on,
bro.
No, I have no way. I don't believe it.
Yeah. Like
I was.
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna do the whole. I got too much going on right now. But yes, absolutely, dude. I mean, for sure. Only ramped up more with children, obviously. But yeah, man.
Amen.
I mean, hey, let me ask you this before we kind of like get to the conclusion of this. What else do you feel like is really, I don't know, just like on your mind with 6.1? Maybe we've talked about it, maybe we haven't. Is there any like sort of lasting thought you want to leave people with for this particular model and the updates?
I am the person that's always, I don't want to say skeptical at launch, but I'm always looking for a way to hate, I think. And that's a really probably not the best, but I'm always trying to be, because we definitely have a little bit of responsibility to tell people what is like really good and what's actually not that good.
We can't be too big of homers.
No. It's I want to have a realistic perspective. We have to call out, it's like I feel like Midjourney's, part of my family now. So, again, we have to call each other out just to, they can call me out whenever they want to. I'll call them out. I don't think it's a lot of the stuff. They're little concerns, not even like I have a big gripe on it, just about anything. So, yeah, I always find myself when these new releases come out being like underwhelmed. And then when I really start looking into it, when I'm putting together content or whatnot, I'm like, oh, damn, this is actually really the small details are what makes this thing so important. So I just got to go deeper. I haven't tested everything that I want to test. I need to spend like probably a week on this, like going through it to find the little choke points and the break points. But there's always things like I like to test too, like stares, reflections, things like that it has a hard time with to see if it actually got better. Because reflections has always been a problem. You haven't been able to get a reflection ever unless it's lucky. Like someone looking at themselves in the mirror and getting that same exact sort of, physics down. Stares, always a hard thing for Midjourney for whatever reason. So yeah, I got to go test those things, see what's going on, and then drop a bunch of stuff into Runway because now that's very fun. But what about you? What do you got?
Love it. I'm just gonna piggyback off a point that you made not too long ago, which is individual features that have been around for a while. I would like to see that improve across the board. I again totally agree with the sentiment, bigger fish to fry. But also we kind of accepted a lot of these things as they came out where it was like, this is what it is right now. And they're gonna come back and make improvements on it, right? It's gonna get better and better. Yeah. And I feel like that's things like pan, zoom out, repaint. Some of those have just kind of been the same thing for a while now. And we've kind of gotten used to it, a little bit desensitized to it. Again, we're splitting hairs here, but I would like to see those be a part of what changes in V7 too. Like upgrades to the tools that already exist. I don't necessarily need a whole bunch of new tools. Like we did name some really cool ideas. And if those things take place, that's great. But if those things aren't the types of things that are happening, let's fix the things that are already there or upgrade the things that are already there. And so not just about the image quality itself, which is what in large part this is, but the individual features that are there can also take this to the next level. So let's just not forget that. And then the other thing that I want to just point out to keep in mind with 6.1, for example, and you've had the same observation, which is let's give it some time because it usually improves as more and more people generate images. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, whether that's something that they get qualitative feedback and they're fixing things in real time, and I'm sure some of that takes place. But I also have a feeling, and I'm speculating, that creating more images and getting those in the system also gives them better insights into just things getting better overall. I don't know if those things kind of work themselves out, but I think like the more images that are created, it also just improves organically. So I would expect V6.1 to get better a week from now, 2 weeks from now than it is today. Whether that's a big jump, I don't think it is, but like subtly. And then 6.2, is probably about a month away. They want to get that data in there. And so let's just keep grinding and see where this thing takes us.
Well, I wonder if they're testing tasteful nudity like they said they were going to, or like looking at it. Because everyone, just as a little story, the first actual V6.1 images I ran, all nudes somehow. Don't know how. I thought I broke Midjourney, and I don't know what was going on. Like everything I prompted, those images you saw of the people with the tattoos sitting on the sidewalk, that was the PG version. I don't know what was going on there, but hey, Midjourney, every once in a while throw you a curveball like that. I'm sure they'll have that fixed up pretty soon.
Gotta appeal to these lonely guys that are just in their mom's basement somewhere. We don't know, but yeah, no, I think that's great, dude. And maybe just like wrap this up. If you guys are still with us, I think we want to just say thank you for the support along the way. This is episode 5. We've been doing this for a month now, just 30 days. I just posted about this on LinkedIn this morning. I think it's the support, the love that we've gotten, the encouragement. This first month has been awesome. You guys have shown up, and it shows up in the follower count, the subs on YouTube. If you guys have not subscribed, not followed us on any of those platforms, here's your shout out. Do it now. And if you let us know that you did it, you know, we'll give you a shout out on a future episode. So like do that, and even better, leave us a review. You know, I do think we need some more of those. Listen to this, give some honest feedback. We would love to hear it. Again, we're not trying to do anything perfect here. We're just trying to be ourselves, get better with each episode, and give you guys everything that we feel is absolutely necessary to know about Midjourney.
I think that was beautifully put, and I can't agree with the sentiments more. We still don't know what we're doing, but we're just doing it anyway.
Was that a soliloquy?
Maybe. That's
Do you know what
word.
a soliloquy is?
You just nailed soliloquy, not operationalization.
Operationalization.
We had trouble with that last week.
We're getting better.
Big words, baby. You know, watch out, SATs. We're coming for you.
We are coming for you. We'll be back with a vengeance in episode 6 as well. But thank you guys for joining us. We're always happy to be here, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
See ya.